Have you ever felt like there's no middle ground in life? Like you're either doing really well or completely failing, with no room for anything in between? If so, you may be engaging in the trap of all or nothing thinking, a mental habit that can often leave people feeling stressed, anxious, and stuck. In today's video, we're going to be talking about what all or nothing thinking is, why it happens, and how it impacts a person's life. And we'll also be talking about ways that you can recognize and manage this all or nothing thinking to have a more balanced and realistic, compassionate way of thinking with yourself. So, what is all or nothing thinking? Um, all or nothing thinking is when you view situations, yourself, or other people in extremes. Things are either perfect or they're a disaster. You're either a complete success or you're a total failure. There's no room for shades of gray. You might think to yourself, if I don't get this task done perfectly, I failed. Or if other people don't agree with me completely, they must hate me. And the impact of all or nothing thinking can be overwhelming. What it does is it creates a bit of a mental rigidity that can increase stress and leave little room for nuance or little room for learning from or even making mistakes. So think about it, a student who scores 85% on a test but sees it as a failure because it wasn't 100%. Or someone who skips their workout for one day and then completely quits their exercise plan altogether because they feel like they've blown it. All or nothing thinking doesn't just sap motivation, it also fuels anxiety because when everything is an all or nothing proposition, the stakes are really, really high. There's no room for error. Making even a small setback becomes a catastrophe. And so, to understand all or nothing, why all or nothing thinking happens, you need to think about the potential causes, where it comes from. And one common driver of all or nothing thinking is perfectionism. This belief that only perfection, only flawless performance is acceptable. Perfectionists often hold themselves to impossibly high standards, and any failure to reach those incredibly high standards is intolerable. Another thing that can contribute to all or nothing thinking is the fear of failure, when failure feels like a personal shortcoming rather than a learning opportunity. What happens then is it becomes tempting to want to avoid risks or see any failure as a proof of inadequacy. Societal messages also play a role, with constant comparisons to others on social media or our expectations to excel in every area of life. This can reinforce this black or white binary way of thinking. Childhood experiences can also contribute to all or nothing thinking. If you grew up in an environment where mistakes were harshly criticized or praise was conditional depending on how you performed, you might have learned to think in black or white terms to avoid conflict or to gain approval from parents or caregivers. And over time, these thinking patterns become ingrained. Now, regardless of where the all or nothing thinking comes from, it's important to view all or nothing thinking as learned rather than an innate, unchangeable characteristic. It's a habit of thinking, not something that's an unchangeable trait. So, how can you tell if all or nothing thinking is something that you do? Well, one thing you can do is to think about your inner dialogue. Do you use phrases like, I'll never get this right, or I always mess things up, or if I don't succeed at this, I'm worthless? These are the types of thinking patterns that are pretty good red flags of all or nothing thinking. You might also notice rigid patterns in how you approach tasks or relationships. Maybe you overwork yourself trying to achieve perfection, or you avoid situations where you think failure is even just a possibility. In relationships, you might struggle with conflict. You may interpret disagreements as evidence of rejection rather than just a normal part of relationships. All or nothing thinking can affect a person's quality of life. At work, it might lead to burnout as you chase and pursue unattainable standards. In relationships, it can cause strain as little misunderstandings escalate into really big issues. Recognizing these patterns is the first step in terms of recognizing that you probably need to make some changes in terms of how you're thinking. Now, the good news is that all or nothing thinking is just a habit. And like any habit, you can learn ways of breaking it. And one of the most effective strategies is to reframe your thinking. When you catch yourself thinking in absolutes, you want to stop and question it. Ask yourself, is this really true? Or what evidence do I have for this belief? Often, when you stop and look at these thoughts closely, you'll notice that they don't really hold up. Reality is rarely black and white, it's full of nuance. So, for example, instead of thinking, I always fail at presentations, you might reframe it as, yeah, I've had some tough presentations, but I've also had presentations that went well, and I'm learning to improve. So, by reframing your thoughts this way, it helps you see the bigger picture and approach situations with a more balanced, realistic mindset. Practicing self compassion can be another important tool that you can use to manage all or nothing thinking because it's really easy to be hard on yourself when you think in all or nothing ways. But it's important to remember that it's okay to make mistakes. Making mistakes is part of being human. So think about talking to yourself in the same way you talk to a friend who's struggling. So, for example, if a friend didn't get a job that they applied for, you'd never say to them, well, you're never going to succeed at anything. Think about what you would say to that friend. Well, you'd say something along the lines, well, hopefully you'd say something along the lines of, look, that's just one job interview. That's one job opportunity. There's lots of other opportunities out there. You just need to keep trying. So think about applying that same type of talk to yourself, that same type of compassion to yourself, replacing that harsh self criticism with understanding and encouragement the way you would with a friend. You also want to think about embracing imperfection because this is an important tool, an important skill to learn. Start small, take calculated risks where the outcome isn't guaranteed. So, for example, you might start with a new hobby without worrying about mastering it, or you might volunteer to contribute an idea at a meeting, even though you haven't really fully thought it through. What you're doing here is taking chances to be imperfect. And each time you step out of your comfort zone, you build a sense of resilience and confidence and reinforce the idea that you don't have to be perfect to participate or potentially succeed. And so, what you want to do is to try and to incorporate these strategies into your daily routine. So, journaling can be particularly helpful. So, keep a notebook where you write down examples of all or nothing thinking and actively challenge them. For each all or nothing or rigid thought, try to write down a more balanced alternative. And over time, this practice rewires your brain to spot and shift these all or nothing thinking patterns more naturally. You want to set realistic goals. Instead of aiming for perfection, focus more on the process. So, for example, if you're wanting to improve your fitness, set a goal to exercise 3 times a week instead of insisting that you have to exercise every day. This type of realistic goal allows for flexibility and makes success a lot more achievable. And when you catch yourself falling into the all or nothing thinking trap, take a moment to stop and to remind yourself that one setback doesn't eliminate all of the progress you made. It's just a misstep, not the end of the road. So I hope that gives you a little bit of a better sense of the link between all or nothing thinking and anxiety and some of the things that you can do to manage it. And if you're interested in learning more about perfectionism and how perfectionism can contribute to anxiety, I'd encourage you to check out this video. So that's all for today's video. As always, thank you for making it all the way to the end of this video, and I will see you in the next one.